Millennials are the last generation that will remember life before the internet, life before social media, life before videos on demand, before all the information of the world was at your fingertips. We are a unique generation that can remember using landlines exclusively and not having cell phones. We saw the evolution of technology firsthand, in real time, from childhood having nothing but a Nintendo and some VHS tapes, to life dominated by smartphones and high-speed internet, all in a 20-year span. We were the first generation on social media. We were the first to popularize smartphones and texting, the first to make video games the best-selling entertainment in the world. At 80 years old, we will regale to our grandchildren the stories of life before everything changed forever. From pixelated platformer games to ultra-realistic 3D graphics almost indistinguishable from real life. Arguably the generation that saw the greatest change in technological advancement in world history. I'd like to explain to you now what it was like for us millennials growing up, and how evolving technology changed our lives, and our world, forever. Nintendo. In 1994, I was a young boy and life was very simple. My indoor activities at the time were limited to what was on TV and my toys. I had a Stretch Armstrong, I had a Vac-Man, I had a variety of Hot Wheels toys to play with, and I even had a Super Nintendo. While not the most graphically intense gaming system of its day, it was a fun console that my sister and I played often. The Nintendo took us to another world, where we could control what was going on in the TV. A powerful pastime that felt so immersive to us. I could fight legendary boxers, travel to magical worlds, punish criminals as a superhero, or to escape the Titanic as it was sinking. The Super Nintendo looks so primitive and antiquated now, but as a child, it completely took over your senses. We would play for hours and replay the same handful of games over and over, even if we were sick of them, because that's all we had. I only had about 10 games that I purchased used from the local video store. A video store was a special place where you could go in person to a building filled with real physical media, mainly VHS tapes and Nintendo games. Now, you were no longer stuck with the pre-programmed TV at home. You could watch what you wanted, as many times as you wanted. For a couple dollars, you could rent a tape or video game and use it for 2 to 3 days. VHS tapes were the only way to watch video on demand, giving you control of your media. My sister and I would often rent a movie on Friday and watch it 4 or 5 times during the weekend. We watched a movie called Carpool at least 8 times over 2 days, and it was a horrible movie. It was recommended that you rewind all VHS tapes before returning them to the store, as it was proper etiquette. There were sometimes fees incurred for not rewinding the movies. You could use your VHS player to rewind the tapes after watching, but a lot of people, our family included, used a specific device to rewind the tape for you. It would do this task much quicker than a VHS player would. The cool ones were often in the shape of a fast car, to make it look more appealing on your entertainment console. The fast whirl of the machine punctuated by a satisfying pop when the tape was done. It's a sound I'll never forget. VHS tapes. We would also record our favorite TV show to a blank VHS tape, which could be purchased almost anywhere, including grocery stores. This was a valuable resource to have. With this, you could record and re-record over the same tape, allowing many hours of video to be captured. You would automatically set the VCR to record straight from the TV at a certain time of the day, when the program you wanted to watch was on. Often, our parents refused to purchase more blank tapes and instead said, just use the tapes you already have, leading to some of my favorite shows to be re-recorded over with some Seventh Heaven junk my sister wanted to watch. Our video store wasn't a popular Blockbuster or trendy Hollywood video, rather it was a rundown local business with a very distinct smell. Mildew, plastic, and stale pepperoni sticks emanating from near the register. The owner was a thinly veiled homosexual man who happened to live next to my grandmother. I remember fondly of this place, as it was a world of new possibility. My dad would let me decide between renting a movie or a video game. I almost always chose a video game. The games were located in the back of the store, where I had to walk past terrifying movie covers like Hellraiser or Nightmare on Elm Street. I now had something to do for the next 2 days. Playing the hell out of my new game. If I chose the wrong game, I was just stuck with it. I would play it just as fervently as a great game. The only knowledge you had on if it was a good game was judging based on the back cover of the box. These game snapshots were often very misleading and led to a rental of a crappy game. If I didn't understand how to play it, or if there was no manual, I was stuck on my own to figure out how to play. No one and no information was available to help me. You get stuck? Try again. You don't understand the mechanics? Too bad. The game is too hard? Tough titties. Video games. You could also borrow games from friends, often exchanging games at school, which was a risky transaction. You never knew if you'd get the game back, and perhaps if you loved the game you traded for, you might claim you lost it as well. All's fair in love in trading video games. I didn't have a computer at this time and wouldn't have one for another 5 years. I had never been on the internet, let alone a computer at all. The Nintendo 64 came out in 1996, and it was the ultimate gaming console for a group of friends. It was the epicenter for childhood entertainment. While I never owned a Nintendo 64, I would always have my friends bring it over when they came over. We would play GoldenEye for 7 hours, then fall asleep in the living room with the classic menu music still playing in the background. Your dreams would be inundated by the sounds of the game, creating a lucid, out-of-body experience I have yet to attain again. We would also play WWF wrestling games, Mario Party, and Snowboard Kids, just to mention a few. I owned a Dreamcast towards the later 90s, which had its own pros and cons. The last console Sega ever put out. While it did have incredible graphics for the time, a unique controller, and games on disc, it was rare, and no one else I knew had it. The games were expensive, and as time passed, it became discontinued completely. But I remember that whole summer I played Jet Grind Radio. I was completely immersed into the world of rollerblading and graffiti. It had a unique, almost comic book-like graphics with a great soundtrack. It even had the ability to connect to the internet, but I was never able to use this feature. Television. Most of our world perspective was viewed from the television. We had about 60 channels. We were also lucky enough to have 2 TV sets in the household, one for my parents and one for the kids in the living room. It was a gorgeous matte black 27-inch Magnavox CRT TV, which would turn out to be the most observed object in my childhood. I guess you could say I was raised by television. My mom worked all evening and my dad worked nights at a hospital. There was something different about TV in the 90s. CRT TVs have a certain glow and vivid color that modern LED TVs just don't have. The high-pitched ping as the tube turned on, and the constant static electricity buzzing off the glass face. Tube TV technology has been around since the 1920s, but reached a peak awesomeness by the 90s. Even today, there is a subculture of people who love and appreciate these TVs. While the love of these TVs may be long-lasting, the tubes will in fact die out in time. Life for us revolved around the TV. Pop culture was king. There was a certain negotiation that must occur between siblings when watching television, a sort of political give and take. If I really wanted to watch the new episode of Ren and Stimpy, while she wanted to watch the big comfy couch, well, a compromise would have to certainly take place. You gotta watch what you wanted last Tuesday, so I should be able to watch tonight. If that didn't work, you could bring your case up to the Supreme Court, which in this situation would be your parents, often met with quotes like, "Just get along," or "Figure it out yourselves." You were truly on your own to figure things out as a kid. No internet to look things up. Only apathetic parents who basically wanted you to leave them alone. Channel recall was an important feature on the remote control. With cable, you had to actually sit through all the commercials. So we would choose the main program we were watching and then select another backup channel that we were kind of watching. During the commercials, your only escape would be to change the channel and watch something else while you wait. I got so good at anticipating when the commercials would be over, I could get to within 5 seconds of the program coming back on, just based off of instinct. You would remember your favorite 20 TV channels and could easily navigate without having to go channel by channel. I could watch MTV on channel 32, or Nickelodeon on 26, ABC on channel 4, or Cartoon Network on channel 39. You would remember these numbers just as well as the address number on the outside of your house. Camcorder. In 1997, my older sister was proposed a difficult decision. Would you rather get a camcorder for your birthday or a computer? To my dismay, she decided on a camcorder, a home recording device allowing you to capture video and audio straight to film. Ours was a high 8 camcorder with a built-in microphone and headlamp. We made so many home movies and productions on our own that allowed our creative juices to flow. We made parodies of popular films or murder mysteries. We made talk shows and funny commercials. It was a great creative outlet and learning experience. These are actual clips from my childhood.
We found it yesterday, August 18th, 1997.
Oh.
Party!
Yeah.
I am blocked.
Hey, we're the monkey. People say we monkey over.
Just call that number on your screen. Excuse me.
We didn't have an infinite amount of tapes, and a lot has been recorded over many times, but I'm still glad to at least be able to take a glimpse into my past life. I learned how to do stop-motion videos. I learned improvisational techniques. I learned how to be a professional actor. I learned how to plan out a narrative and how to film a scene. Our pinnacle of our camcorder days was probably our Relevant for the Day parody of Titanic.
So you want me to draw a picture of you, huh?
Yep. Don't leave me, Jack. If you leave me, I won't have anybody to play yahtzee with.
Hey, honey! I'm going away!
You know, it's funny how people's reactions to being recorded used to be compared to today. In the 90s, it was a rare occurrence to be recorded by a camcorder. Most people took it as a time to be silly or say something funny to the camera. Nowadays, cameras are so pervasive that if someone is filming you, they assume the worst. Maybe they are trying to prank you, or maybe to post to the internet to shame and ridicule you. Being captured on camera used to be a joyous and novel experience. Electronics. We were left to our own devices. Literally, our own devices. Like the cheap handheld gaming consoles like Beauty and the Beast, or Lion King. These were much worse than a Game Boy, which I was not gifted and could not afford. With repetitive levels and only black unlit pixels as characters, you had 4 buttons to control the entire game. Once again, an awful experience looking back, but at the time we enjoyed it thoroughly. I was also a remote control vehicle fan. I would often get a $100 RC monster truck on Christmas, then by playing in the long dewy grass in the backyard with it until it finally broke from invasive moisture January 7th. Bummer, dude. Home phone. The home phone was maybe the most important piece of electronic equipment you had in the home. You needed it to do almost anything. Ordering pizza, calling your grandma, talking to your friends outside of school, dialing emergency services, saying you're not interested to companies trying to sell you things before hanging up. You would use it to order things from the television. You would use it to call Cleo to learn about your future. Call me now! You could even use it to call a payphone for some underworld dealing. Payphones were anonymous calling stations found all over the city. There was no tracking of who was placing the call. With a couple quarters, you could covertly contact any phone number in the world. Typically, these payphone booths would be associated with illicit activity, or for people out and about with no cell phone to be able to use. In modern times, people are much more likely to text rather than call, but the art of conversation was learned on the phone. On the phone, you have no tool but your voice to convey your message. Your speech levels and communication abilities were sharpened to a fine point. You would learn cues of people's tone of voice and wording, what they really meant, and how to read between the lines. The texting technology takes away a lot of the information you can glean from actually talking to a person. I fell in love on the phone. I broke up on the phone. I fell asleep on the phone. I argued on the phone. I made love on the phone. The 3 digital wireless handsets we had I would use vociferously, oftentimes using a phone until it died. Then I would fall asleep, leading to all 3 handsets to be found in my room by the end of the week, completely dead, which led to my parents yelling at me to always keep one charged in the kitchen for others to use. You would remember multiple 7-digit numbers of people you called the most. At one time, I could recall probably 8 different numbers by heart, 56 total digits burned into my memory. 892-8189, 892-5839, 252-212-2332. You called the numbers so much you would know it by muscle memory and by pattern of buttons on the receiver. My best friend and I were sort of the original video game streamers, playing the same game over the phone and talking about what was going on inside the game. We would laugh and joke while gaming for hours. I said, "Go here on the map and drop a grenade. It will glitch out and shoot the grenade 150 feet in the air." Or, "I just did the difficult mission where you have to drive a mini helicopter in the construction site. I'll tell you how to do it." Little did we know we were doing something in the genre that would have gotten millions of views over the coming decades on the internet. He also didn't mind watching me play one-player games like Resident Evil Nemesis on my Dreamcast. For hours he would watch and be enthralled in the action. I thought this was kind of strange at the time, but to him it was more like a movie, where he could watch my skill and ability as I beat the levels. Now watching people play video games has become commonplace and very popular. Computers. Time seemed to move slower back then. I gathered information about the world from illustrated world atlases and the dictionary, as well as the Guinness Book of World Records and Ripley's Believe It or Not books. I was amazed about the world and all that it had to offer. I finally used a computer when in the 6th grade we were corralled into the school's dedicated computer room. It was filled with tall white computer towers and big bulky white CRT monitors. The main focus for this class was to improve our typing and writing abilities. Little did the teacher know that when his back was turned, almost the entire class was playing Midtown Madness in the background. Someone must have found a free link for a download on the internet. A fond memory and perhaps the first time I shirked my academic duties in a public forum. I was guided on this new program called Microsoft Word by a trepidatious virtual teacher named Clippy. He was a paperclip, and he would tell me all about the different font types, how to use margins. He would correct my spelling, and he was a joyous respite from the monotony of class. Clippy was a fun guide and teacher for anyone new to word processing. The computer was still an elusive technology to me at the time. I knew about them, but hadn't had a chance to really use one outside of the computer room, except for the twice-a-year occasion when we went to my uncle's house for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Instead of listening to the long, drawn-out, boring adult conversations, I asked to play on the computer where I could play the Oregon Trail, a notoriously famous historical adventure game where you took the dangerous trek from Missouri to the Pacific Ocean in a covered wagon. The graphics weren't great looking back, but the gameplay was amazing. I was in the driver's seat of an entire expedition into the unknown. As a kid, I would make life or death judgments and was responsible for a whole group yearning for a new life. A task I took very seriously. The internet. I gained a lot more computer experience when in 1998 our family purchased our first PC. It was from a now defunct company called Tiny, a British distributor of home computers. Undoubtedly, my dad found a good deal in a newspaper advertisement. A whole new world was now open to me. We would originally use Netscape Internet Access, which was one of the largest providers at the time. Most people know that classic sound of the phone system communicating with the computer to access the web. While disrupting to some, this jolting sound would be associated in my mind with the excitement and joy of the internet. I remember some of the first web pages I ever visited. Sites dedicated to alien abduction and UFOs, which had always been a big interest of mine. I would click on a hyperlink and wait about 30 seconds for the entire web page to load, which would give me time to use the bathroom or get a glass of water. This didn't feel slow to me. This felt like a small price to pay to access a world of information. There were web pages about anything you could think of, mostly text, pixelated images, and the occasional GIF file. There were a lot of problems with early internet usage. For example, if you were using the internet, it would tie up your home phone line, meaning nobody could use the telephone when you were online. This limited your usage of Netscape to consider the other 3 people in your family that may need to make a call, or who were waiting for a call. "You have 10 minutes till I need to call your grandmother." Negotiation and compromise were needed to survive in this kind of climate. I was also curious about chat rooms and AOL Instant Messenger, the first place I could communicate with anybody, anywhere in the world. It seems mundane today, but the thought that I could go into my living room computer and be chatting with someone from Germany or Nova Scotia instantly was an amazing opportunity. At 10, I was in there, mixing it up in various chat rooms. This is where I learned how to type 120 words a minute by the time I got into middle school. I didn't use the home keys like they tell you to do in school, but I got the job done. I would click on a chat room for something I was interested in, like baseball or video games, and just talk about anything my heart desired. Then if I found someone who was on the same wavelength as me, I would ask for a private chat where we would talk one-on-one. I would talk to people from Texas, Canada, Kansas, England, and everywhere in between. We would talk about whatever was going on in our little adolescent lives, using popular code words like LOL, laugh out loud, or OMG, oh my god, G2G, got to go, TTYL, talk to you later, or forgotten phrases like POS, meaning parents over shoulder. This was a message to the other communicator to keep the chat clean for the time being. ASL was also a common ask in chat rooms to find out everybody's age, gender, and location in the world. Millennials were the first to use these now infamous abbreviations. I even downloaded and used the nostalgic Bonsai Buddy, a little purple ape that would pop up on your desktop and help you with various tasks. He could also sing songs and tell jokes. I thought he was my friend, but it turns out on February 18th, 2004, the FTC would release a statement indicating that Bonsai Software Incorporated was ordered to pay $75,000 in fees, among other aspects, for violating the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. They collected personal information from children under the age of 13. This would be a prime early example of adware and spyware disguised as something else. I also used AOL Instant Messenger, or AIM for short. It was similar to chat rooms, but was for private chats with friends I knew at school. This was a fun place to message and use emojis for the first time, between someone you actually knew. When I see modern apps like Discord, I just think to myself, this is the same thing we had in 1999 in a chat room, with just a different wrapper. You can join groups of people that have similar interests and meet new friends, whether it's fashion or counterculture. Everything the new generation is doing, millennials did it first. I'm not saying this is some kind of weird brag, but rather as a reminder that people are still similar in a lot of ways. Computer games. I was a big computer game aficionado, mainly because computer games were simply cheaper than the version on PlayStation 2 or GameCube. I just wanted to play and didn't care which platform it was on. I played Tony Hawk 3 with a keyboard and mouse, and I got very proficient at it. There was a lot of problems with playing early computer games though. Crashes were constant and random. You could play a game for hours and hours, forget to save your progress, and just then the game would close out and quit for no apparent reason. All your hard work down the drain. A very frustrating endeavor which often led to you not playing the game for several days or weeks in total despair. Your only hope was to find a patch online that would fix your specific problem. A lot of games would come out and not even work at all without a specific patch that you would have to find on your own. I would play strategy games on the computer in the late 90s, which was a great genre for the platform. Not like the popular first-person shooter games most people play today on the computer, but games like Age of Empires 2, Tropico, SimCity 2000, Pharaoh, Sims, Roller Coaster Tycoon, and StarCraft. The computer was a perfect instrument for these kinds of games. There was a sort of stigma involved with being a computer gamer in those days, not like now where the most popular game streamers almost exclusively play on the computer. If you knew too much about computers or were on them a lot, you were viewed as a computer nerd, literally a term outcasting you as some kind of stay-at-home freak loser. The cool kids played PlayStation and had no shame in not knowing their way around a computer. To buy my computer games, I would go to various stores like Circuit City or Office Depot. The shelves would be stocked floor to ceiling with big box computer games, big bold designs on an 8x10 x 3-inch box, sometimes with fold-out covers that would reveal even more art and gameplay features. They made the games look so damn cool, even if they weren't. Inside would be a big in-depth manual and jewel case. It also came with a physical warranty card that you could send back to the manufacturer for certification. It felt like you were really buying something significant, not like today in the digital download wasteland in which we live in. Most people don't care about physical games anymore, but growing up as a millennial, I have a deep appreciation for the actual physical aspect of ownership. To this day, I have continued collecting physical media and have well over 1,500 physical games over 8 consoles and the computer. Portable CD player. The portable CD player was an integral part of the 90s lifestyle. This unit allowed you to listen to music wherever you go, a bike ride, a walk, the river, or to have a nice lunch at McDonald's. You undoubtedly looked cool and cultured once you put on those headphones. My favorite CD player was more advanced than my previous models, as it had a 40-second disc skip feature, meaning no matter how you jostled around the player, the music would continue playing for 40 seconds even if the disc could not be read. A huge improvement, especially when jogging or riding a bike. When going on a bike ride, I would have to keep the CD player perfectly horizontal, lodged in my sweatshirt pocket, or I would dangerously keep it balanced on the bike handles to make sure it did not skip. The only other option was a tape player, which didn't skip much but had its own series of issues. Cassettes were cheaper and more popular in the 80s and early 90s, but cassette tape quality was very poor, and often the tapes would wear out with excessive use, leading to even worse quality or crackling noise. Also, occasionally the internal mechanism would catch the physical tape and crumble it into a tangled ball of yarn. You had a small chance of rewinding the tape by hand to fix the cassette. Stereo system. My parents had a large, antiquated audio system from the early 80s. It had a center unit filled with a tape deck and a record player. Two massive 4-foot-tall speakers reproduced sound that a much smaller speaker of today could replicate. I remember asking for my favorite song to be played, My Sharona, on vinyl record, and would sit crisscross applesauce in front of one of these towering speakers and close my eyes. The driving bass line and energetic lyrics took me to a different place. I fell in love with the power of music and sound. In the 90s, smaller 2-speaker stereos were a status symbol. Most everyone had a stereo in their room to jam out while doing homework, talking on the phone, or just thinking about life. Panasonic, Sony, Iowa, Magnavox, JVC were popular brands, typically black or silver. The best stereos had an all-powerful bass boost button to add a booming low end to all your music. A 3-disc changer was a popular tech that allowed you to listen to hours of music without having to leave your bed. CD quality was amazing, and while more expensive than cassette, they were the most popular audio media for me growing up. CDs were so expensive and highly sought after, you would often hear about people's cars getting broken into and their entire collection being stolen. Imagine someone breaking into your car for a booklet of 20 CDs now. It would be insane. People would take pride in their large books of CDs with inserts, showing off their collection of 50 or 100 CDs. A valuable resource to trade or borrow from, or to impress a potential love interest. Radio. I had a small alarm clock in my room that could also play the radio. My first favorite station was KBSG 97.3, which would play the oldies, the pop music hits of the 50s and 60s. I would even set my radio to play music as I fell asleep, automating the radio to turn off after about 30 minutes of playing. The radio was big and profitable in the 90s. It was a go-to source for news, music, and talk shows. People would remember what time a show was on and plan accordingly. Something else I noticed in modern life is that there was no longer that constant playing of music in grocery stores and malls. Every store and shop in the 90s you would go into would have different music playing, and even in the walkways of the mall, music would always be playing in the background. I'm not sure why this fell out of fashion. It was always more enjoyable going grocery shopping while Michael McDonald was crooning about losing his one and only love, or Marvin Gaye professing his need for sensual healing. MP3 music. The digital takeover of music was slow and steady. I remember having a couple CDs of my own, Jock Jams Volume 1 and Will Smith's album Big Willie Style. But as time progressed and I gained access to my own computer, I was able to start downloading my first MP3 files illegally. Although at the time we had no idea it was actually a criminal activity. We used the now notorious program called Napster. Napster was the first of its kind, leading to changes in the music industry and new laws to prevent the pirating of digital media. I would hop on my computer at 8 p.m. before bed and find 5 or 6 songs to begin downloading. My computer would work all night, feverishly downloading bits of information so I could wake up 8 hours later and be able to listen to great songs like Weird Al Yankovic's parody songs about Star Wars, or Alien Ant Farm's Smooth Criminal. Sometimes you would wake up and find out only 4 out of the 8 songs you tried to download were successful. You would have to just try again or find another uploader. You were taught patience and perseverance when using this old technology. You had to work at everything you wanted to do. It wasn't just handed to you. I didn't have a CD burner until the late 2000s, therefore all my MP3s were stranded on my home computer. But I did have a classmate in high school who did have one. He was selling any burned illegally pirated CDs for only $2 a piece. I quickly took him up on this offer and began making a list of hundreds of songs I wanted burned to disc. It was well worth the deal considering CDs were going for $10 to $20 retail. iPod. One of the biggest investments of my young life was an iPod. Music was very important to me, so I could justify spending the $400 I had saved doing chores around the house towards a beautiful handheld music library. A huge upgrade from keeping 4 CDs in your backpack or even having a 5-disc CD changer in your bedroom. I had a black 3rd gen with 80 gigabytes of storage. More storage than I thought I would ever need. I could keep all 5,000 total songs I downloaded or owned and have space for a lot more. My music library was everything to me, and now I could bring it with me wherever I went. I spent many days ripping my hundreds of CDs to my computer. Some even saved onto the computer with scratches and skips on them. I even scoured my parents' CD library for anything else I also might enjoy. Now I could fill any boring downtime in my life with music. Riding a bus to a baseball game or walking to school in the morning would become so much more enjoyable. Air conditioning. We never had air conditioning growing up. It wasn't in our home, and it definitely wasn't in our cars. My dad would joke for us to roll up the windows when it was hot to fool the other people in traffic that we did indeed have air conditioning and that we must be rich. AC wasn't very common and was too expensive for most people to have. Instead, we cooled off in our 4-foot above ground pool or by eating an Otter Pop. DVDs. When I first heard about DVDs, I didn't understand why it was so much better. What's all the hubbub about? VHSs are fine. I had been watching them my whole life. Who wants to pay extra money just to watch something on DVD? But once I actually watched one of these, the difference became clear. Towards the late 90s, DVDs became more and more popular. They became cheaper and cheaper in price, and you could see them everywhere. Grocery stores, pharmacies, rent them at the library. You could easily bring them to school and trade or borrow. They were completely digital. There was no wear and tear like on a VHS tape. You could watch the media 1,000 times with no degradation. The video quality seemed 10 times better than the fuzzy, blurry VHS image, and the audio was crisp and clean. You could even skip around the DVD by chapter, and it even had bonus features. This was undoubtedly a better technology that still is remarkably sold in stores today. My most watched DVD at the time was a copy of Joe Dirt. While it gained many surface scratches from constantly leaving it on coffee tables or bringing it over to a friend's house, it never let me down and never skipped. We saw the emergence of portable DVD players, which were also very expensive at first. But on a road trip to an away baseball game or while traveling, there was nothing better. No longer did you have to stare out the window asking, "Are we there yet?" You could enjoy a multi-million-dollar production on your 5-inch DVD screen. I never owned one, but would make friends on the bus just to be able to enjoy a couple minutes of Austin Powers or Step Brothers. It was truly a game changer. Social media. MySpace hit like a Mack truck to our generation. I remember being in class in 2006, someone explained to me what MySpace was. It was your own web page that you could customize and connect with other people. It was like AOL Instant Messenger, but you could keep public contacts and add pictures and music. I was at first against it. Why do I need my own web page? I can contact people if I need to talk to them already. But in time, I saw what a big deal it was and created my own. MySpace was a fun way to put yourself out there. You could post your best pictures and add all your real-life friends to your profile. The top 8 was a place to keep your 8 favorite people in your life, all jockeying for position. I remember changing my top 8 often to accurately reflect how important these people were to me in real life. My best friend and girlfriend would bounce between 1 to 4 based on if we had a fight or if we were mad at each other. And the other 4 would also change if I met a new person or stopped talking to a certain person completely. People often said, "I better be in your top 3, or "Why did you take me out of your top 8? It seems so petty now, but at the time it was a real issue. As it evolved, you could customize your page even more. HTML editing and very unique backgrounds with GIF files. There were so many tacky pages with goofy quotes and glittery, unreadable texts. There were pictures with wording on top and bottom, like early memes all over many pages. You could tell a lot about someone by their MySpace page. Unlike Facebook, you could customize the page completely to match your personality. You could also select music to play when someone visits your account. One of my favorite parts of MySpace that I miss. It was often an icebreaker for someone who wanted to chat with you but didn't know what to talk about. "Hey, I like that song," or "Have you heard their other song?" Social media didn't control our life and we mainly used it on a computer, but most people would check it every day or every other day. Facebook and Instagram would take over social media a few years later, destroying MySpace for good. Once social media became more easily accessible on the smartphone, it became more of an unhealthy addiction. Facebook started taking over in the late 2000s. I didn't see any reason why Facebook was better than MySpace. It just seemed more bland and formal, but nevertheless, everyone seemed to be merging over to this new social media site to avoid being left out. I also created one. Facebook is now just a wasteland for the ramblings of the boomer generation, or to check on your classmates to see who is still alive. But at one point, it was the most trendy, cool social media in the world. Cell phones. I did not have a cell phone until after high school. Cell phones were a cool thing to have in school, but I would only estimate about 20% of people who actually had them. In the mid-2000s, the cell phone was still viewed as not necessary for non-adults. It was also expensive. No cheap unlimited plans with lots of data. You would often buy a certain amount of minutes and texts every month. I would talk more, but I only have 40 minutes left on this month. Or, I've got to make this quick, I only have 10 minutes left. If you went over your minutes, you were hit with extra, exorbitant fees. Roaming fees, out-of-network fees, long-distance fees. It was a messy nightmare. And good luck trying to charge your phone if you forgot your charger at home. There were about 25 different proprietary chargers for all the different brands and models. Ugly, strange 16, 20-pin chargers with hooks and different attachments with different locking mechanisms. I remember my girlfriend had the famous Nokia brick phone. At the state fair, she bought a custom, very unique case for it. It was the most ludicrous thing you can imagine. A clear case with 20 LED lights all over it. When someone would call, it would light up like the 4th of July, with the ringtone music blaring. While a cool novelty, it would burn her battery about 10 times faster than without it. This was the era of ringtones. Millions and millions of dollars would be generated by people purchasing custom ringtones of their favorite songs. If you had a ringtone for a new popular song that was out, you were looked at like a cool person who had disposable money. Soulja Boy's Crank That, or the one I bought, Justin Timberlake's Sexy Back. My favorite phone for texting of all time was this, a Virgin mobile phone with the flip-out text pad. I swear to you, I could text 120 words a minute with this bad boy, and I did often. Really, the only thing to do on cell phones back then were to check email, send text messages, play the most simple games on earth like Snake, or to take the worst pictures known to man. 0.5 megapixels doesn't do an important memory justice, yet we took them anyway. Hundreds of valuable moments captured in the worst way possible. Cameras. Digital cameras were a much better device for capturing good quality images at the time, which became more popular after 2000. But we grew up with those point-and-click film photo cameras in the 90s. We kept the unused film rolls in the fridge to help extend their life. My mom would regularly develop a couple rolls of film at the grocery store every other month. Usually around 24 photos could be taken with each roll of film. That meant you wanted to capture the very best moments. You didn't have time to waste on average everyday things. It was expensive to buy the film and you have to have it printed professionally. You might only have 8 photos left in the roll for your birthday party or vacation trip, so you better make it count. The only way to crop a film camera photo was in the literal sense. You could cut up the picture by hand with a pair of scissors. There is a certain aesthetic quality these film cameras have that have become more popular in recent years by Y2K-loving Gen Zers. But don't forget your millennial predecessors. Everything you're doing now, we did it first. Digital cameras were a great step forward in photo technology. Now you can store hundreds of photos on one memory card or floppy disk, removing the reason to be careful and waiting for the right moment to snap a photo. Now it didn't matter how many shots you took, leading to a great change in how and when people took photos. It was so cheap to snap a couple hundred photos, then pick your favorite 4 or 5 to print out. While digital cameras also looked pretty bad at first, the technology got good fast. By 2004, digital cameras were better and cheaper than film cameras in a lot of ways, leading to the eventual fall-off of film cameras completely. Modern generation games. Towards the end of my high school career in 2006, I remember going to Best Buy to browse for video games. I saw a PlayStation 3 connected to a high-definition display. I played a racing game called Moto Storm. I was completely flabbergasted by the graphics. It was almost indistinguishable from real-life video. It literally blew me away. I was just looking at the screen thinking, how could it get better than this? I always thought there would be a day where graphics would reach this incredible point, but didn't know how quickly it would happen. Going from playing Root Beer Tapper to this, was mind-boggling.
Space Corps, things like that.
I bought an Xbox 360. I played visually amazing games like Dead Rising and BioShock. It wouldn't be a couple months until I got the dreaded Ring of Death. Microsoft notoriously used various manufacturers for their consoles with varying quality. I had gotten one of the bad ones. Microsoft was kind enough to allow me to get it fixed under warranty, but 5 months later, the same thing would happen. I was totally turned off by Xbox completely at the time. I switched to PlayStation for good and haven't looked back. I wouldn't even start using a high-definition TV until 2010 when I moved out and coughed up the $900 for my own big-screen 47-inch Insignia widescreen TV. All I had known in my life before that was those 3 little red, white, and yellow audio-video cords and a hulking big back activity tube television. Since 2010, I would say a lot less has changed than the previous 20 years before it. In 2010, we had smartphones, Unreal Game Engine, social media, Bluetooth music, YouTube videos, high-speed internet, and everything we have today. We lived through the most incredible rise in technology that any generation has seen. 1990 to 2010 was a massive whirlwind of ever-evolving technology. Millennials were there to see it all as it came out, exponentially better every year. Millennials were hated at the time they came of age. There were so many bad articles written about us, just as Gen Z is now. They were accused of ruining brick-and-mortar businesses, of being lazy, not hardworking, of ruining the internet with memes and frivolous social media, of wanting to shun real life in order to live a digital one, of not investing in the status quo like our generations before. But if you really break it down, we are only a product of the technology around us. We lived through 9/11, many wars, one of the worst economic recessions of our nation at the most pivotal time in our lives, a housing crisis, and the rise of political correctness, and the biggest advancement in digital technology. We've seen it all, and we'll tell you about it if you ask us. Find a millennial in your life and ask them about what it was like. The last generation that will remember the simple life before everything changed forever.
Well, that's the end of our show. What a great 100th episode. We hope to see you later on in our 101 show. But from now, it's bye-bye for Lenny. And hello, good morning, America.
Thanks for watching, everybody. I have a full-length video on DVDs and why I still collect them today. Please subscribe and like to help my channel grow. Thank you to everyone for helping me reach 1,000 subscribers and to allow me to monetize this channel. I really couldn't have done it without you.